Stephen King's Misery. Read this over the weekend. Really good. I liked it. It's pretty short, like 300 something pages. I was trying to think if I've seen the movie. I know I've seen parts of the movie. I don't know if I've seen the whole thing though, because I don't remember how it ended. But the way this ended was different than the way I thought it ended. If you haven't seen either the movie or read the book, it's about a writer named Paul Sheldon. There's a video on YouTube, actually. There's a woman that goes into a bookstore that's asking for Paul Sheldon books. Nobody knows what she's talking about. That was a joke, because the character, the bad guy, is a woman named Annie Wilkes. And she's really fat and gross. And he really describes how fat and gross she is. Talking about her breasts stinking, and her teeth are all fucked up. And she's like, he compares her to like one of those rock idols that you see in Peloponnesian culture and whatever. And he has just written a book about a guy who's like a car thief. He says it's like the best book he's ever written. And he's also written a series about this woman named Misery Chastain, kind of like a romance bullshit kind of books. And this woman is a big fan of those. And she's like mentally weird. She's like, she was a nurse and she killed a bunch of people when she was a nurse and got away with it. And she would like turn their oxygen off and stuff like that, or give them pills. So he has a car wreck and she saves him. Her name's Annie Wilkes. Did I say that? And takes him back to her house and like nurses him back to health, and then kind of forces him to write another Misery Chastain book. But she makes him burn his old book that he just finished that hasn't even been published yet. He doesn't have any other copies of it. The one that is his best book ever written. So yeah, then he goes through like writing Misery. It's like the last Misery book, he killed the character off, and she was mad because it wasn't going to be anymore. So that's why she makes him write a new one called Misery Returns. He has to bring her back to life. He has to make it believable. And then like he writes the whole book, and like the police start looking for him at some point, and they start like coming to the house. I think one cop, she kills the cop and hides his body, and then another two cops show up, and was that the first cop? He yells out and he throws something through the window, and that first cop gets killed. The second two cops show up, and she like talks him into not saying anything. So they're like in the house, like 15 feet away, but he can't say anything because she's got a gun and she's going to kill these cops if he says anything. And he ends up like finishing the book, and he likes it. He thinks it's like the best Misery book, maybe the best book he's ever wrote. And then he burns it in front of her to get her back, and she freaks out. He smashes her head with a typewriter. The thing I didn't remember from the movie though is like at one point she cuts his foot off, and then she cuts his thumb off with an electric knife to like hobble him. But in the movie, I thought she like put his legs together on a piece of wood and she breaks them with the back of the hammer, or the back of an axe maybe. I remember her cutting his foot off. There's this whole thing about like the basement being full of rats. She's kind of like a hoarder a little bit. It's just, I don't know. It's fucking gross. The book gets into way more detail about that. It's also weird. Like, you imagine having to cast, what was her name? That woman? Kathy Bates. Yeah, she knows she's being cast because she's not attractive. Because you're playing an ugly character. That's her whole thing, is like being ugly. That's just weird. But yeah, in the end, he still like freaks out when he gets away from her, and he thinks he sees her everywhere because he's got PTSD from it and stuff. It's pretty fucked up. Yep. I don't know what period this was from. I know he went through like the Bachman books period, and it was a period where he was drinking a lot. But this like really gets into like addiction and drinking, like being addicted to Novril. I don't know if that's a real pill or not. I know he got into like, he had some addiction problems at one point, and like some people say that was like his best writing or his worst writing. I don't remember that period. I like it all pretty much, except for like Black House, and I don't know. Yeah, that book I never could get into. I had to like DNF it. Anyway, good book.